Hi, and welcome to the third masterclass of the 2024 to 2025 series with the MET Orchestra Musicians at Lessonface, featuring Nancy Wu. I'm Katie Falk-Flores here with Lessonface, where we connect students with great teachers for live lessons and classes. In this masterclass today, we will have 3 student performance and coaching sessions, followed by a brief Q&A at the end. So please enter any questions in the chat box if you have them, and we will address them following the performances. And now Luca Zylik, a student at the Special Music School in New York City, will play the fourth movement Andante from Symphonie Espagnole by Eduard Lalo.
Beautiful playing. And you have such a nice feeling for this music. You do, your tempo is really nice, and you do very nice things with the rhythm. This kind of Spanish rhythm. You do that really very, very nicely, and so that the style, I find you really are capturing that very nicely.
Mhm.
And you have nice chops, you get around really well. So my main general comment is that I'd love for you to sustain your lines a little bit more.
Mhm.
So with two things, both with your bow. So a lot of it is just, especially going from your down bow to your up bow, if you can just keep, and we'll play some spots. And I assume, I mean, you didn't make any mistakes from what I could tell, so I don't think we need to go over anything as far as like mistakes, right? No, I think everything, note wise sounded great. But I would love to work with you a little bit on how you might sustain your lines a little bit more with your bow, and also to keep your vibrato somehow a little bit more consistent so that we get the some longer lines, because I feel like you definitely have that in you, and you feel that, and but this will maybe make it even a little bit stronger, your interpretation. So if we could start from the beginning. And so one thing, again, let's try playing and be very aware of your vibrato, and try to keep it. There's certainly, it's not like you have to vibrate every note the same. In fact, we can do things with our vibrato, right? As far as intensity, and as far as how wide it is, how fast it is, all that kind of thing, to get different expression. So it's not that it has to be the same all the time, but there are some times where I have a feeling where we can add some vibrato where maybe you're not aware that you're not vibrating. So let's start from the, oh, sorry. Let's start from the very beginning, and I'll stop you here and there, okay? So good. Thank you. So what I found you did really well was the bar with the eighth notes going to that crescendo. That bar, those few bars worked really well. And if you could do if somehow in those first few bars, if you can maybe, so whatever you did, maybe play just those bars with the eighth notes, da dee dee da, that bar. Play it once, and let's see what you're doing with your bow that makes it really like that. That phrase for me works really well, and you make this nice crescendo, and it really sustains right to the crescendo. Let's see what you're doing with your bow there that works well. So it's interesting. Also, you do the decrescendo really well, and what you're doing, which I hope everybody can see, is that you're using your bow, and then the crescendo. When you come to the top of your crescendo, you're really sustaining into the frog, and then you don't use all of your bow as you're doing the decrescendo, and that to me works really well. Now, the first few bars are a little bit trickier because of it's kind of a longer phrase, and there's like quarter notes, and then there are half notes. So let's see what we can do. Maybe you can do something similar, where you do the half note on a full bow, but maybe the quarter note a little less, so that you can stay like maybe in the upper half, for the D, C sharp, and then you have all your bow, so that we can maybe proportion your bow a little bit differently so that we can keep, because I think you're trying to use a maybe more bow on each one of those. Let's see if we can maybe do something again like what you did with the decrescendo coming down, or just figuring out how to use your bow. Okay. Sorry, I would say start in the middle and come to and you have more bow for that half note. Something like this here. Let me see if I can demonstrate. So, oh, sorry, I need the music. So, maybe something like. So you maybe have more bow for that half note, and then maybe not all of the bow for these two quarter notes, and then you have more bow for the half note. Want to try that and see if that feels good to you? How did that feel?
It felt nicer.
Good. I think we've only needed a little more bow on. Maybe you can use a good amount of bow on the E in the third full bar, so that you have more bow for that D that's longer even. And that even I think you could even crescendo, or have direction to that E. I mean, that could work, that try once more and see if that works. But the first few bars, I thought they did seem to work nicely. Beautiful. That was beautiful. I thought the way you came to the bar with the eighth notes, you had this that I thought that was very, very nice.
Thank you.
Hopefully you'll get other feedback. But to me, that was you really had a beautiful phrase there. Now, now that you have the bow worked out, let's take a look at what you're doing with your vibrato. There, okay? So I'm sorry. You can start wherever you're comfortable, but just so that you have more bow for that half note. Wherever that seems a little maybe too low in the bow for it. It didn't look quite comfortable. Whatever's comfortable, but okay. No, that E, you need to vibrate that E a little, especially if it's going to be kind of like a more, and you're doing with your bow this kind of nice kind of like emphasis on that, right? So do it also with your vibrato. Good, good, good. So you know what might help you with that fourth finger vibrato is just to make sure that your fourth finger is, you don't have to actually move your hand to get to your fourth finger, but just make sure that your fourth finger is kind of ready to go. But I felt like you were trying to make that, like you were changing your position for the vibrato. Try once just to let it, trust that it'll work. Okay? Beautiful. Beautiful. Did that feel okay?
Yeah.
That sounded great. And you're doing such a nice job with the bow there. Such a you got it. So let's see. let's skip to something like maybe after, I'm not sure whether you have letters or
Yeah, I have
you have
letters.
letters. So after B, the entrance, that forte entrance. Let's see what we can do with that one. Okay. Oh, very nice, very nice. So here, I think you can possibly be more sustained. So maybe, and again with your vibrato. So you have a good vibrato. You have a good fourth finger too. So like let's see if we can maybe eh, start that phrase once more and let's see what if there's any. I think bow wise it was quite good, but a lot of it is just especially those fourth fingers. Let's but I don't want you to feel tense. With that we don't want. But just again, see if trust that it'll work. Okay? Let's try once again. Good, good. That was much. I thought that was you kept your expression. Would you consider after the top F maybe connecting that to the next note? Sorry. So so connecting a little more with your bow possibly. So in a sense, so maybe almost connecting, or see if that feels okay to you. Instead, you're right now you're making a little bit of a emphasis on the E, which also could work, but maybe try so that it might keep your phrase going a little longer. And I'm wondering too so you're articulating those a little bit, right? I'm not, or did you intend to slur that? Or either way, I would say try to keep the a little bit more, like a little more sustained before the little note, however you articulate it, but just that you can keep that a little more vibrant, a little bit longer. So let's do the same phrase, and I thought that worked. And even if you can, like with that little bit of crescendo here, this. Maybe you can even make more of that crescendo. Okay. Oh, great. Beautiful. Beautiful.
Thank you.
Beautiful. And let's let's go on a little bit. If that feels good to you, I mean, just those few, I thought that worked really, really nicely. So, is there anything else that you would like that you have questions about, or that you would, any particular section that you would like to do a work on in, like, in the latter half? I mean, we can certainly go on like this. Um, but if there's anything that you would like to do, I'd be happy to tackle that.
I would like to do D to like after all of the small notes, the quick notes, the
Sure.
understays.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Great. Great. So why don't you start from, yeah, somewhere, wherever you'd like there. So very good. The cup, the, and is there anything in particular that you?
um, like the slide down.
Okay, okay, sure. So I think the way that I learned how to do those is that you kind of vibrate going down. Have you tried that? Where
Yeah, but I kind of get stuck on like at the end.
you're kind of like that's how I learned how to do it. Have you want to try that? I thought the first time that you played through, I thought it seemed to work well. But you want to give that a try, right? Just right there. Yeah, something like that seemed to work better, right? So you kind of it I don't know why exactly that, but it gives, I guess it gives it the impression of you, like
Yeah.
somehow the little vibrato helps, like makes it sound like you're making the steps. Um and just keep your finger, fairly light going down. And I think you can let it go. The next thing that comes, but you can, like, just, why don't you try that once and see how, like, as it goes on or something, you can maybe let it go even faster as you make the crescendo. Great, great, great. That sounded great.
Mhm.
Excellent. That just had this nice little kind of, like, that sounded excellent. So the one little thing that I would say in the like in the phrases before that are when you have some of these things that are like um, uh, I would try to be a little smoother to the F sharp, so that where you have the little accents, so that just so even I think so try that once so that and that happens the other time too, right? So just so that um, if you can just be a little smoother with your bow, getting to that, and then kind of phrasing into the accented idam, I think that that phrasing wise could work a little better. Do you want to do the pickup to that? Good. So even maybe what you might do, you're doing an up bow, right? Can you start this bow a little slower? So that if you start it fast, then you get a little bit of an accent. And you know these accents can also be also quite a bit of left hand too, right? So try give that one more give that another try. One more try for that, and then we'll go to the very end. Excellent. You have very good control of your bow speed. That's excellent for your age. That's great. And you did such a beautiful ending. I'd love for you to just um do once again. Let's do just the last few bars. But I thought the way you got into the very high D was really, really beautiful. But let's see again, maybe from something like the last 8 bars or something, and um, try to stay nice and light with your those octaves. Okay, with your left hand. And vibrate your. Make sure you vibrate every
Oh,
note.
good
Okay.
singer.
Beautiful, beautiful. So again, important that you keep that vibrato, like that we there, especially there at the end, that every note, or that you're just aware of every note, that you're making sure you vibrate each one. Just do the last 4 bars, and again, just make sure that that you know whatever every note. Okay, last 4 bars. Keep your vibrato right to the end because you do so you get there really nicely, yeah. So just keep it right to the end, and you might again make sure you have a little more bow for the end, but you do it beautifully, and you get right up there so very well. So congratulations, really, you have. I love what you started to do with your bow. It's really that bow is the right hand is such a big part of your musical expression. So congratulations, because you do really well with that.
Thank you so much.
Excellent, excellent job, Luke. It was great to hear you play. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
And now Zachary Liu, a student at Hunter College High School, will play the first movement of Violin Concerto No. 1 in G minor by Max Bruch.
play. There, you have a wonderful romantic expression for this, which is, of course, for Bruches. That's you have a really wonderful feel, and you do a lot of the technical things very well. But we'll see if we can figure out a few ways for you to work on some of the things that maybe don't feel quite as solid to you. And one general comment for that I would, and something you might think about is how you use your bow. And so I, at the very end, actually, I'd like you to just start, actually. Um, the very last solo, um, the very last one that starts on the low G,
Hmm.
144. So what I want you to observe is how you came into the how you came from the trill into the last landing note. And I and so the angle too of your camera, I it's a little hard for me to see exactly what's going on with your bow, but is it possible for you to raise it so that it's a little bit more at your bow level?
I think we need to turn off center stage on the camera. I hadn't caught that. Zachary, if you
Oh,
swipe down from your top corner and see if center stage is enabled in control settings.
um,
So if you swipe down from the top left or top right, we should have an overlay that gives us the control center, and there might be a video effects button on it.
yeah.
So we're going to turn
Okay,
off
I
video
turned that
effects.
off. Sorry about that. Yeah.
And now it will be stable.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's better. That's better. Great. So what I'd like to see, I found that in general that you could use the bottom half of your bow, the bottom part of your bow, to greater effect. And you might also, it might help you to make sure that your upper arm is kind of following through. Sometimes it feels like it gets a little like it stays down and then it doesn't allow you sometimes you use your upper arm very well. Like some of the stuff on the G string, it seemed like that you the so it's not all the time, but just there were times where it felt like when you got to hear that by just making sure. But let me see you play this last cadenza now
Hmm.
with this different view because that seemed I felt like the way you got into that last note was really good. So I'd like to see how you do that. Great. So yes, it's interesting. On if you see a video of yourself when you're on the E string, you're the you're in a better position for your getting to the frog, right? Somehow that works better. But when you're like on the A or D, I feel like if you could just find some way so that it's just it's a little it also has yeah just a it might mean just I don't want you to raise your shoulder at all but maybe just to have a little bit more so that this in a way this instead of like so it gives you it actually if you just feel this it kind of makes it also a little just a little easier there at the front but let's go back to the beginning but that was interesting to see because on the E string it definitely it feels like that plane right of your or the angle work. That's kind of what you want to find for the other strings as well, I think might help you. But let's go back to the beginning. And again, you really have a very good sense of this style. So the one thing that or let me ask you if there's any particular issues that you would like to possibly discuss in this piece or just in general.
Um, yeah, so in terms of the technical spots that were messy, I mean, part of it is nerves, obviously, but otherwise, I feel like I just want to be able to practice those better, if that makes sense. Just like have better
Absolutely.
strategies for going through those. Um,
Absolutely. That's a big part of it. So how have you been practicing those? For instance, I felt like once you got into these faster passages like measure 26 or something like that, right? Felt just a little like maybe it um or how may I ask how do you tackle a passage like that?
so I had just been doing it slowly and incrementally, getting faster, but also sort of the adding on one note after another, like that kind of
Okay. Okay.
sequential.
That all seems
Um,
good. And the slowly and incrementally faster is my total go-to method. Absolutely. So that's excellent that you do that. So here's the question. When you're doing that slower practice, part of playing slow is to really see like what works. Like sometimes for us, if for I know for myself, like if I'm practicing a shift and I can see, oh, I'm not quite in the right position to start the shift, or I'm like tensing before the shift. That's a lot of I find my issues with shifting is like just being, and also sometimes, and I couldn't quite see your left hand, but sometimes it's also making sure. Actually, once you play any of that part that you'd like to work on, and and maybe if you could come just a touch closer to the camera so I can see your left hand a little bit, if that's possible. I'd like to, yeah, so I can see your left hand. Yeah,
okay.
yeah, yeah, like that. Let me see that. Good, good. So good. So this time definitely worked a little better. So it's almost most of the time, right? When we have an issue with the passage like that, it's the shifts, right? So let's do it. Let's just see. I know this might take a little time, but maybe this is worthwhile. So if you could once play it, and normally I would use a metronome to just slow it down. But let me see you play it once and let's see how exactly, like especially the second one in measure 26. Let's see how you're doing that shift and how exactly. So if you could play that in some slower tempo, but in tempo. Good, very good. So in this time, in a way, what would you say was the issue? Was it the shift or was it something else?
I think both of the shifts were okay, but the just like the hand positioning directly after was off.
I agree. I totally agree. Very good. So, what I would suggest is when you get to that, it seems like you need to just spread your fingers a little bit more, right, to get those few notes after. So when you get to that, you're on a first finger. You shift to a first finger, right?
Hmm.
So when you get to that first finger, see if you can relax and have your third finger and have those fingers kind of ready to go, but like in a relaxed position so they can stretch just enough to be in that position, right? So like in a sense, or I guess in a way you're let me see, you're right. So it might not be stretching here or here, but maybe, maybe when you lift for the maybe it's relaxing when you kind of lift your bow right before the third finger and fourth finger, and then having those like kind of in a relax. Well, just try it once and see if just by like after that first finger, like or making sure you're as relaxed as you can be when you're on that first finger. See if that helps. So the other little thing to keep in mind is that you want that fourth finger also to be in the position because right now you're kind of shifting, you're adjusting it after you get there. See if you might want to, and you might want to make very consistent how your fourth finger comes down. Um, because that that can really affect also like if it here I'll show you, hopefully you can see if you come down more at this angle or if you come down at this angle or whatever, but you just want that fairly consistent, and it might mean trying to be a little also make sure you're somewhat relaxed in this part of your hand. So do that nice and slow, and even just yeah, just from the middle of that be da dee da dee da be da dee da dee da dee ba dee, just from the 16th. Yeah, exactly. Good, good. And now do it once more and see if you can find that same kind of the same position. How's that feeling?
Better, yeah.
Better. So yeah, just even a little thing. So I bet if you do that in and you practice that nice and slow, but with your vibrato, with everything, all the expression, hopefully that'll feel better. But sometimes it's just again finding that little, kind of trick that and but the angles of your fingers and making that consistent can really, really help. Um, let's take a look. Oh, so here, for instance, this is a slightly different thing. Well, actually, well, so yeah, I hope that that helps you with that. Let's see what the next passage, and maybe similarly trying to just make sure that your fingers, especially that fourth finger, going up to the when you go from that going up the octave. Let's see, and then go on, and then when you get to this part at the frog, these chords, and then see again, maybe play around a little bit with this elbow thing and see. Let's see what happens with that.
So from like
So like from the net, like
35.
if you want to from there, I'm sorry. That sounded to me, those chords had a nice sound. Did that feel okay for you?
Mhm. Yeah, it felt better. It felt
Felt
like
better?
a little bouncier, less heavy.
Great, great. And so the other thing that I notice is again your fourth finger. Some if you can make more consistent how your fourth finger comes down, I think that's gonna make you feel a little more you'll be able to trust it a little bit more. So just again that angle. So do that once again and see be just or just observe what your fourth finger is doing when you go up that to the octaves there. So could I sorry, that's right. Let me just so what happens and is that when you go up, then you actually you change here, but then when you're on your octaves, you're more like so. See if you can go up and keep it a little more, like yeah, like see if you can. It might mean being more on like one part of your pinky pad rather than on like rather than the other. Better, better. So do you see when you're doing your octaves in lower positions, do you see how your pinky is? Like
Hmm.
do the ones that are in like second position or something. So you see that your pinky position. If you can keep that when you're also in the higher registers, you kind of get there. And it seems like that's a little bit more comfortable when you're, yeah, like if it can be even up there, a little bit more in the same position. So go down. Yeah, you see how you see there if it can if it can be more like that in the upper positions, which might mean again, it might mean you're like actually more on this side of your pinky rather than this side of your pinky. I know it's a very small thing, but it I find it can actually help with just making it more consistent. Yeah, you see right there when you got to the A, did you see you got in? See if you can do your B flat in the same, really same position as that A octave. Better. Yeah, better. Did that feel better?
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
what I would say is like when something works like those, the A octave seems like good, right? And seems whatever's more comfortable. I would analyze and see, oh, this is what I'm doing. And if there's a slight difference, that might be the difference that can really um, help you or hinder you. So that great, but that the chords felt better also. I'm very happy to hear that. So let's see. Mm, oh, little small thing here. But for instance, the in measures that you have these trills. um,
Mm-hmm.
in 56, right? So when you get to, can you make sure you vibrate the F before the A flat? I think you can. That could be such a nice like. Um, it can just add to your expression there. And one other vibrato spot was the top of your run in right on the downbeat of measure 90. And but you did such a nice job with your using your vibrato in those arpeggios, like around 103, 4, 5. That was great. How that had I loved the way you did that. And so let's just hear let me hear the trills, okay, and going into that and going into the un poco più lento, if that's possible, somewhere around there, wherever you would like to start. So that's beautiful. So that that bit of a vibrato right before that A flat was great. That was wonderful. Let's see about this little slide here. This will be. Oh, actually, I were. Oh, sorry. I'm so sorry. I was just gonna say, just to make sure that that slide that you keep your finger nice and light. Actually, we could just do that one thing. So this. And try, yeah, so do that once and let's see again, keeping it light, but keep an eye on the angle of your finger sliding into the note. Good. Did that feel better? Do it once more. Let's see whether it was just chance or whether. Great. Beautiful. That sounds great. So I'm afraid we're out of time, but bravo. Beautiful job. And
Thank you so much.
That
thank
was
you.
really great, Zachary. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you for your wonderful playing.
And now Sehong Zheng of Camas, Washington will play Chaconne in G minor by Tommaso Vitali.
Bravo.
Thank you.
Wow. That was fantastic. Excellent. Um, so, and also congratulations, you have a completely memorized and really very, very impressive.
Thank you.
Um, so for working backwards, just a few little things. Or let's start with some of the things that I particularly liked. I really liked your at the very end this little cadenza. I liked the way you paced that and the way that you the kind of flourish up to the right before the trill. I thought that worked really really well, and a lot of oh some Oh, like after 15, you have this espressivo, and that I thought that came through nicely. Um, and certainly, just you have all, you have all of it very well prepared. What I would like to, a general, one, a couple of general things that I think you can think about like the others, I think you can be a little more aware of when you're vibrating and when you're not. For instance, if you could play for me at number 3, this section, and just try what happens for you, which happens for most of us, and so it's very common, is that certain notes you vibrate and certain notes you don't. So try it. It for expression. It will try once and just be aware of what you're doing, and just for yes, maybe 8 bars or something. So do it again because right just right there on the A natural, your first finger actually didn't get vibrato. So just do it even a little if you want to do it a little slower, but just be aware of your vibrato. Okay, this was the A natural was good, but then the next B flat also. But every note that you so this is already so much more expressive because there are fewer notes. But just again, it's a partially just making sure. And sometimes I find making a video of myself really then I just see it right away. I can see like, oh my god, I didn't vibrate that note, or and sometimes you don't always realize it, but that recording yourself can really help. So that kind of thing. The other thing is that I find that a lot of your bow strokes start with a fast bow, and which makes everything a lot of things sound accented. That, and I'm not sure whether, or I would encourage you to think about that also because sometimes you want that, but sometimes in order for your phrases to start and have or to have more line, you you want to sometimes not have that happen. So let's, for instance, let's try, and especially, and one thing that I think you can also do is like in this first page. So we'll take a look at this first page in particular. He writes, or whoever that I think he writes some of these decrescendos. So at the end of those decrescendos, I think you might try at least to see if you can have a bow that doesn't give it an accent. And so that for instance, especially I found like things like this. He has these little hairpins, and however you bow it. So that these landing notes, maybe just to be a little aware, and something like that, or even right before. Yeah, actually, let's play this page once more, or and even the third line. So he writes there also a diminuendo. So you might at least play around a little bit with again, so how you can use these dynamics, or how you can use your bow so that your lines your lines are a little bit more horizontal coming down and then maybe rising up, so that the some of that direction happens not necessarily at the beginning of your bow strokes, but from one to another. So try from the very beginning. And even if you wanted to, like, there's certainly plenty of, you can make, for instance, the beginning very emphatic. If you want to do that, that's great. But then maybe see where there's some place where you might get a longer line. So let's see what you uh, possibly like where it says where he marks it down to piano. But let's see what, just experiment and see what you, or and just be a little aware of what you're doing with your bow. Okay?
So start from the very beginning.
Yes, try from the very beginning. Great. Even right now, that already has more line, because that I thought that already was a just gave me, I was following your line a little bit more intently. Did that feel okay for you?
Yeah, I feel like it felt less aggressive when I played, that's for sure. I think I noticed that.
Which, and the, or I think it's also good in this whole thing to find more, you can find more characters and colors. So there might be some places where you want to be aggressive like that, right? There definitely, this piece is so cool in that way, because I find it has a lot of colors and a lot of, so there are places where you can definitely do that. But this I thought was beautiful, and I thought you got a really nice, more singing line. So keep playing and see if you, for instance, or actually play. Let's play this first theme once again, and going maybe to one, and then maybe we'll skip to some of the other sections, because there's some really cool colors that we might find. Okay, but let's hear this beginning once more. I thought that was really good. Beautiful, beautiful. That, how did that feel okay for you? I
I
felt
again, yeah, going back to the whole aggressive thing, I feel like in the beginning, I always feel more tense when I'm playing the song, but I feel like I understood the melody better when I was playing it with more intention, I think.
it certainly came through that way, I felt. And the melody, so great. So this is something I think also sometimes can help in the moment too, to just think about the musical line. And when you're practicing, be very like, the more the more cognizant you can be of how you're using your bow. I One of my former teachers, who was a concertmaster of the Vienna Philharmonic, he used to say that it's very easy, also as an orchestral player, for you to lose some of the real subtleties of you how you use your bow, and it almost more. I mean, it's of course keeping up your intonation, but the bow, and you'll see. I think you'll find there, like when the more you can have, you know, feel like you have control, or there's so much you can do with the bow musically, and it's very empowering, but it's also very easy when you're playing a lot to get into bad habits, or like not have your bow go straight, or bow, sound production. So this, but already huge, I thought a big difference, and really so much more singing, beautiful. So let's look at, for instance, on before four, the four bars, we have a pianissimo dolce there. So again, let's see what kind of a special sound. I think also with this piece, and Zoom might be messing with the dynamics a little bit, but I think both with your vibrato, you might try something special with your vibrato, maybe slightly faster, or more, something that really brings out that dolce, and maybe even a lighter bow, and again being very, very aware of how you're, of singing through this. So let me hear this, and again maybe even going into the next section just a little bit to make this also sound even more leggero. Okay. If you want to do just a little going into this piano dolce, um, maybe 2 bars before that. So maybe a total of 6 bars before four, if that's possible. Good, good, much, much, much better. So actually, and we'll do, if um I would almost say, even in that leggero spot, that you could even maybe let it just flow even a little bit more, just so that it even has a lighter feel. So, but another thing that coming up where he writes sospirando after this, I also, and you might try in this spot to have an even airier bow. So, and lots of expression from your left hand. Can you try this, maybe right there? It's, I think, yeah. Sorry, go ahead. You play first. So how about you might. So it might be like, I think you can almost use all of your bow for those two kind of up bows, and just lifting a little, so that there's a kind of a lift in between. See if you can do that with a quite a bit of air, in a sense, within the bow. So one more time, and a little bit of vibrato on the eighth notes. Once more. See if you can taper even a little more of these eighth notes. So it's almost, there a slight bit long, just a little longer, like there's kind of, you're like almost a little breathless in between. Oh, nice. Beautiful. Beautiful. That was beautiful. Very nice. So again, these colors and these little these characters. So also important, if you can make sure that the downbeat of rehearsal 6, I would say try to not accent that one. Beam bam, so that the syncopations in a sense can be come out just a little bit more. Let's do um, one thing I thought, oh yes, this one at number 12, where he writes Contenerezza, which is a kind of also a little bit of a very, very dolce. And I think you can be even like somehow, because you're playing with piano, likely you can really come down. Pianists can really, so you can really explore some special pianissimo color right there. So how about right there? Let's, let's try this once more. Let me I let me see how you do that once again. There's with your vibrato, see if you can keep your hand frame and your vibrato. Even for your first finger, try to keep it a little bit more in this particular spot. I feel like you're maybe moving your hand to try to accommodate your vibrato, but try to, let's see if we can keep it just a little bit. Good, good, good. And I think you can take time on that F. And let's see, like I was let and maybe if you could come a little closer to the camera, I want to just see how you're doing. I think you have enough time to both get there and just to be expressive. Once more. Good, that's better, better. And then finally, let's just one little thing is at 19, I would suggest that maybe you don't do the same rubato on every one of those triplets. If you could elongate a few of them, but maybe just so that we understand the rhythm, you know, not to do it every time. Um, so just play me a few bars of 2 bars of that, please. Yes, I think that works nicely. You did it on the first one of them or here and there. And then also to that also makes it feel like there's a little bit of the affrettando, which means it's kind of moving forward a little bit. I think that'll help that. So let's just hear your very, very last cadenza because you did that so, so well. Can we do it from the last, with the sforzando and then the cadenza and then with your ending? Excellent, excellent. My last suggestion is that if you can be a little slower with that last note, play that last chord, but be a little slower with your bow, body, then you can actually hold it. Just the very last chord. That's great. Great. Bravo. Bravo to all three of you.
That was wonderful, Seha. Thank you so much for playing that for us today. We really appreciate that. I do want to say thank you so much to everyone for tuning in and participating in this masterclass today. Thank you to our performers, and especially a huge, huge thank you to Nancy today for her inspiring coaching. So a round of applause to everybody. Really appreciate all of that.
Bravo to all three of you.
Did wonderful, wonderful work all along. We have just a couple of minutes for some quick questions that came up over time. And I think, Nancy, for me, some of the things that came up repeatedly, there are a couple of themes that I found in your teaching today that I would like to just touch on if possible. One of which, slides, keeping the finger light on slides was kind of a recurring motif going on. Are there any particular exercises? I think with Zachary, you were talking about the angle of the finger also sliding into the note. Is there anything that you recommend for working on this?
Not any particular exercises necessarily, but I do find both the keeping your angle, of the finger, both the finger that's sliding and the landing fingers, just to be consistent. That can really help. At least for myself, I found that to be really helpful. So just because sometimes slides are for me, they are often challenging, but like, just being kind of um, trying to make sure that you, like, especially with the fourth finger, I find it's very easy to change positions, but the more that you can keep it consistent throughout, that makes your intonation feel a little bit more secure.
Wonderful, thank you. There was also this, in a couple of times we talked about awareness, and this I think is just a general musician thing that we have to do. So you talked about analyzing when something is working and how we can apply it to other things that we're doing, like with Zachary and his double stops and those octaves, or just the awareness of vibrating. Like when we're vibrating, we're happy, and then when we're not, we kind of forget that we're not. And then you actually mentioned you do record yourself with video to kind of catch yourself on this, or what are ways that we can practice this awareness of like how we can get better with these things?
Well, slow practicing is great because it gives you time to be aware. That's especially with it, if you have a passage that's like not working or sometimes works and sometimes doesn't. So then slowing down, as I think all of you have done, that gives you, and slow down what as much as you need to. There's no too slow. And then but the recording is really helpful. I was shocked recently. I was rehearsing with some people, and one of my colleagues recorded the rehearsal. And then I listened back, and I was like, "Oh my god!" It's like I said, I wasn't vibrating this, and this was out of tune, and this note didn't have a good sound, and I crunched this one, and so like recording can be really good. I mean, not everybody needs to, so you have to kind of see. But if it helps you, nothing wrong with it. It's actually can be really, really helpful.
There's that flip side to recording. I think that it's easy then to, we can hear what we can improve, but then what happens? How do we balance that? Or is there a way to balance that kind of critique that comes in on ourselves? Not only how to get better, but, oh no, this kind of squashing of our spirit that can happen when we hear these things.
That's a really, really excellent point. And so one thing I find too, and I've been trying to encourage in my students, is to talk to yourself in as neutral a way as possible and kind of objective. So like just to say, oh, I was, this note, not even but this
Mhm.
note was too low, or this shift was could be smoother, or because it is, you want to be as critical and as harsh with yourself as possible, but in a way not to talk to yourself like, oh, stupid, why did you do that, that again, and, like, really, but try to just, in a sense, put a little distance and be kind of like a little cool with an objective. But, again, to be very detailed is very important. But,
Mhm.
like, again, how you talk to yourself is kind of like how you would want, somebody to, or how you would, I don't know. It's like, again, kind of getting outside of yourself and not being, harsh or, emotionally too emotional about it.
Absolutely. It is that so important to be able to hear these things. I think it's just easy. It's easy to slide into criticism of self rather than, okay, how can I make this better?
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. And never to feel like you can't do it. There's always a solution, I think. There's, but sometimes, again, it takes a lot of the self-analysis and trying to figure out, well, am I tense here? Am I, what am I doing? But there's almost always a way to improve something. And, improvement is everything. So, like, just to keep every little bit of improvement, can add up. And I also find every little, like, technical thing, like if you figure out some technical thing, then that makes you more relaxed, especially anything that
Mm.
helps get rid of tension, then it makes it easier to deal with other technical things, when you're less tense.
There was another thing that you had talked about just a little bit more on the end about finding more characters and colors, and this is more along the lines of musicianship. And I think it's an easy trap to fall into, especially if we're really passionate about a piece. We kind of come at it one-dimensionally instead of really taking it apart. So is there anything that you recommend? So obviously score study, we should be listening to recordings. What do you do to really pull out, more characters and colors within a piece rather than getting locked in on just our one perspective as we get going on the piece?
That's excellent, excellent question. Another one. Um, I I also think when you're practicing slowly and you're doing the technical things, you have to also incorporate, do what you're doing musically, because you can't really add that in, on top of the technical, because it really changes the way, like if you're making a color or if you're doing something with your bow, you want to do that in slow motion as well. So that's part of it. But I think a lot of it has to do with, um, yes, score study. I think you have to try to get inside the music as much as possible. And so, and harmonies, harmonic changes, can often give you some clues as to where you're going or what colors you're trying to get. A lot of what, the composer writes, dynamics. And again, it's not only about louder or softer. Sometimes it's about, like, expressive, like this is getting more intense, or this is, you know, changing. If he makes a decrescendo, what is it? Besides just getting softer, are we? Is there something going on there, or is there something expressively, or I think to try to expression is such a big part, and you just try to find the expression of whatever it is that's a lot of it. And character, that's it's all part of the same. And that can also very much govern, what kind of sound you're trying to get, what kind of articulation, um, that so, and what you do with your bow. So it makes it fun. And it
Do you
makes it much more than just the technical thing. It's so much more than just trying to play in tune and rhythm and all that. It's really, like, ultimately you want your audience to feel something. So never forget that part.
Do you ever experiment with characters and colors, like when you're finding and working through something new a little bit?
Yeah, yeah, sure, sure. Like, recent, like, well, it depends on the music, of course, and sometimes it's more clear what the composer has written. But, like, with certain things like Beethoven or Mozart, there often is, like, a dance element, or or there might be more rustic element, or but sometimes they don't necessarily write a lot. especially, Mozart, Beethoven, and then Bach really doesn't write a lot, so then and then so with Bach, I think there's a lot of range, of what you can do with it. So part of it is, yeah, you can experiment. You can also just, be, in a sense, live with the music. You can also listen to lots of recordings, but a lot of it is just living with it and trying to feel, how do I react to it and what
Mhm.
makes me feel, what do I feel? And then you have to convey it in a stronger way than you ever think, you know. It never comes across quite as strong, when you're to your listener, and that's where the recording can also help. But yeah, a lot of it is just living, feeling it inside. You want it to come directly out of you,
Mm.
and not just like ideas.
Cerebral, yeah.
Yeah, 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 as much as possible. I think that makes it stronger.
Well, wonderful. Thank you so much for your time today, Nancy. We really appreciate having you for this masterclass. And also, again, thank you, Zachary, Luca, and Seha for your wonderful playing today. We really appreciate you all tuning in for this masterclass, and we hope to see you next time. Thank you again, Nancy. Thank you, and everyone take care.
Thank you, Katie.
Thank you.